Sheena, how are you?
Hi, Jocelyn. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me as a guest on the show. I'm really honored to be here today, especially to talk about confidence.
Yes, and you know a lot about confidence. You've even written a book about it, Sheena. So tell us about the Tao of Self-Confidence.
Yes, for sure. So, the Tao of Self-Confidence actually started as a podcast. So in 2015, when I was trying to find resources that really catered to Asian women's confidence, I couldn't find any. It was so hard to find any support systems that cater to Asian women's confidence. So a part of me felt like something was wrong with me. And culturally, we're not told to talk about our feelings, to talk about what we're going through, the issues that we're going through. And at the same time, representation was so important for me. Growing up in Toronto, not being able to see anybody that looked like me, I always felt ashamed of my own culture. So that's how I started the podcast in 2015 when hardly any Asian people were podcasting at the time, interviewing all these amazing Asian women on their journey to self-confidence. I've been able to interview over 700 Asian women on this topic from around the world, different Asian backgrounds, because we're all not from China, different careers. But I still wanted more visibility. I love podcasting. I'm so grateful for it. But at the same time, it's still a very small platform compared to other forms of media. And I believe media representation is so important because that's how we dismantle the negative stereotypes as women we go through, right? Especially women in underrepresented groups. So in February of 2021, we released a book called Asian Women Who Boss Up, which highlights the stories of 18 Asian women who are able to forge their own path, overcome obstacles, and thrive. And it's part of an anthology series called Women Who Boss Up. So we have different themes: moms, women of color, Latinas, real estate agents. We've had 10 books since the start of the pandemic. And now I have my new book, The Tao of Self-Confidence, a guide to moving beyond trauma and awakening the leader within. And this was so important because, first of all, there's not really many Asian women talking about leadership or writing about leadership. And when you look at the stats, Asian women have one of the lowest representations of leadership roles in America, and it keeps declining. So, I was wondering, why is it that we have one of the lowest representation in leadership roles? There's over 24 million Asian Americans in America, but yet we have less than 3%. So, there's a lot of leadership books out there, of course, right? But a lot of them are how to, right? Like how to be a leader, which is fine. But we have to really talk about the things that's holding us back, right? Maybe there's some trauma in our life that's literally holding us back that we're not aware of. Maybe there's trauma from our ancestors or from our parents or grandparents that's stuck with us that is also holding us back, right? Or just the mental health. Mental health is such a taboo in our culture, not being able to talk about it. And then as Asian women, we're just constantly seen by our negative stereotypes, right? And then the Asian American or AAPI community, we're seen by the model minority myth, being seen as successful, being the model citizen, thinking that we don't need help, that we're fine on our own, or whatever bad things that happen to us, we never complain, and we're always grateful, which really is unfair because we're all different. Not all of us are successful. There's huge income disparities. There's different Asian cultures, but yet 2023, we're still constantly seen as a monolith. So that's a little bit about the book.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And there's really a lot to unpack there. And I want to start with overcoming your past to get to where you are, because I think the wonderful thing that you've done with the Tao of Self-Confidence is do the hard thing and talk about those hard stories, because oftentimes we do just want the how-tos. We want, like, what's the checklist? And if I do those things, I'll be successful. And usually on those checklists, you don't see the hard work, the deep work, the unpacking of those things that we've pushed under the rug for so long. And the thing about pushing things under the rug, whether it's trauma from, like you said, your ancestors, or things that you've realized in your own life, is that it's still there. You're just not aware of it. And so it exists and affects you in ways that you're not always conscious of. So tell us about your own journey.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, being able to interview so many Asian women, was also therapy for me. I
Mhm.
realized I wasn't the only one dealing with these issues, not feeling good enough, second guessing myself, couldn't make a decision for the life of it, resisting a lot of things, overthinking. I mean, most women deal with that, right? But being able to learn that they were also dealing with that and be able to overcome it it gives me hope knowing that, nothing is wrong with me. I'm not crazy. And we all go through this because we're all human beings, right? One of the biggest things that our culture tells us not to do is to ask for help. But it's important to ask for help because if you're trying to do everything yourself, you're going to get burnt out. You're not going to feel good about yourself. You're going to have low self-confidence. And we all have a blind spot, right? That we cannot see. It's called a blind spot for a reason. It's kind of like when you're driving, there's a rear view mirror because you need to look at the blind spot as you're changing lanes, right? Without it, there's more risk to hitting a car, getting into an accident. So it applies in our life as well. We need help. We need someone who can see our blind spots, who has a second or third pair of eyes, who can see what is stopping us to move forward, whether it's reading a book, talking to the mental health professional, listening to podcasts like this, or just joining a women's group, right? It's so important, or even attending a self-development class, right? I remember I attended one in Hawaii in 2016. And one of the things I've really realized that was just really holding me back was this notion of failure. So a little backstory, I went to kindergarten in the Philippines. And I actually failed kindergarten for coloring outside the lines of a photo.
Mhm.
Like I could not color within the lines. They would give me a brand new photo and I still colored it outside the lines. And because I colored that one photo outside the lines, I failed kindergarten. I literally had to move to another school and redo kindergarten all over again. And so for the longest time, up to like my mid 30s, I thought I was just a failure in everything I did. And if it wasn't for that self-development class that I went to or event or yeah, course, it made me realize that I was just always meant to color outside the lines, right? I was just never meant to do things, the path that I was given, right? Especially for Asian women, it's like you go to school, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you never rock the boat. I was not meant to do that, right? And so I realized, I was just always meant to color outside the lines, be outside the box, not be in that path. And that gave me, a big boost of confidence knowing that that was my path. It was just, that less road travel, right? And I was okay with that, right? And also just being able to learn like things that will happen in your journey, right? Like, social media is so great and so bad at the same time, right? We look at the perfectly curated photos, we see the perfect life, the perfect business, the cars, the travel, everything. Sometimes we feel like, oh, they have it all figured out. Oh, they're so successful. But some of them, you don't realize what their struggle was,
Mhm.
right? I remember one time Lizzo tweeted before she got like mega famous, right? I mean, she used to, just sing at every single bar that would take her. Even if they paid her in beer, she just took it. And I'm so glad she mentioned that because people don't realize the struggle that we have to go through to get to where we are today. There's no such thing as overnight success. We all have to put in the work day in and day out to get to where we are today. I'm not saying that, um, you know, there's special cases, of course, that could happen, right? But most of the time, you put in the work, right? And then as you work hard, you work smart, you get there. But sometimes we just see this, we're like, oh, why can't I be like her? Why can't I be like her? Right? We compare a chapter 1 to our chapter 20. So I think if we just are more honest about what it's like to forge our own path, like it's not easy, right? Especially when you're doing meaningful work. For me, it's very important for me to elevate women, especially Asian women, because of what I went through. That's not always easy, as a person who's not Caucasian, you're not taken seriously, even more so as a woman,
Mhm.
right? You're still seen by the negative stereotypes. Even with this book coming out, as I'm doing interviews, a common question I would get is, do you think it can relate to people outside your culture? And in the beginning, I was like, yeah, it didn't really, it didn't sink in until this question kept popping up. And it's like, why do they constantly ask me this question? Do they not believe in my ability to relate to other human beings just because they don't look like me? I mean, everyone's gone through trauma, everyone has confidence issues, everyone wants to learn how to be a leader. You would never ask Tony Robbins or Jack Canfield if they could relate to someone. Heck, you wouldn't even ask Paw Patrol if they can relate to children. So why is it that I'm being constantly asked these questions? And this is the problem with mainstream media sometimes, if you're not, if you're a person in an underrepresented group, sometimes you get asked the stupidest questions, like the dumbest questions. And it's just really annoying because we're all human. We're all smart. We can answer smart questions, but it's like I remember the old lady who won an Oscar for Minari, right? One of the people who asked her, the one question she asked her, instead of like what it was it like winning an Oscar, was like, what does Brad Pitt smell like? Right? Because I think Brad Pitt presented the award. And I just love her answer because it was just the most savage answer in the world. She's like, I'm not a dog, right? But this is the kind of questions like for people who are not from the United States or Canada get, like these really stupid questions that you would never ask anybody. Like you would never ask Bill Gates that, right? Or even like, Martha Stewart, but yet we constantly get tested by our abilities based on the color of our skin, how we look, our cultural heritage, and that needs to stop, right? This might be a little bit of a rant or a tangent, but it's just like
For it.
wake up call.
No, and it's such a necessary wake up call. And in that, you said so much. And I want to touch on the fact that, like, a human experience is a human experience, right? And the way that that is presented may come in different forms or fashions, but we all have the same thread, the same fiber, the same being. And that is that we're human beings, we're spiritual beings having this fleshly experience. And so I don't know, I'm offended even by the fact that you were asked that question, but want to really tap into the fact that you've been able to handle it with such grace and really own your story and continue to color outside the lines. I think so often, especially when we're told those things at such a young age, you were, 4 or 5 in kindergarten, being told, hey, don't color outside the lines, and failed because of that. That's something that we take with us, whether it was you're told that you're too loud, you're too spicy, your dream is too big, you're not going to be a singer, you need to focus on this, whatever it is that we were told when we were young and our minds were still forming and we're getting to know ourselves, that sticks with us. And I think that that difference, that nuance, whatever makes us unique, that's actually our superpower. Your ability to color outside the lines and create something beautiful that was different than what other people were doing, that's your superpower. And I think even as adults, sometimes we have a difficulty realizing that. We do, like you said, go on Instagram and compare our lives, compare our chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10, not realizing that, one, we are all on our own individual journeys. 2, those journeys are not going to look alike. And 3, we're supposed to be unique and different. And our expression is supposed to be like, that's who we are at our core. And so holding back and presenting anything else is really dimming our light.
No, and I totally agree. And, it's unfortunate because I talk to a lot of women and, these women have fantastic stories, but they always say, well, no one's going to listen to my story. No one's going to hear my story. And it's like, excuse me? I mean, I've talked to women who've worked for the Pentagon, who, were undercover cops or, just had these crazy, amazing, like badass stories. And yet they're like, yeah, but no one's going to want to listen to my story. And it's like, yeah, they do. That is an amazing story. And, even now, right? I mean, for so long, I was rejected all the time because people would tell me my story would cater to a specific audience. And I didn't even know what that meant, just because I talk about Asian women and I talk about the issues that we face. It may seem like I'm catered to a specific audience, but people can still relate to that, right? People can still relate that we have taboos in our culture we're not allowed to talk about. People can still relate that there's always pressure when it comes to society and culture and family values. And so for me, at one point, I just felt like maybe they're right, but then I would look and be like, no, they're wrong, right? Especially now as this book is out, I've seen people from all walks of life order this book, sharing it on social media, being able to say, this book is amazing. Thank you so much for creating this. And this is not just people in the Asian community, this is people from all walks of life. I remember a couple months ago, I shared a Vogue cover on LinkedIn. It was from Vogue Philippines, and they have a cover of this Filipino woman who's 106, and she's a tattoo artist. Yeah, it's one of the most beautiful covers it's one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen in my entire life. She's the oldest Vogue model. It shows her strength, her beauty, and it defies everything that a woman goes through: ageism, the beauty standards, colorism, all those things, right? And when I shared that on LinkedIn, I mean, it got almost 30,000 likes and was celebrated literally all over the world,
Yeah.
right? So that is proof that doesn't matter where we come from, doesn't matter what our culture is, our specific stories can literally change the world. It can change the world, it can find different solutions, we can see things in a different perspective, or we just learn something new from each other's cultures, right? And being able to learn from each other, that's how we can work together to eradicate, all the problems that we're going through still in 2023.
No, you couldn't be more right. And I think it's actually really important for us to, if I feel like, okay, I can't relate to that, that's an indication to pick the book up, or it's whatever that is, to engage in that conversation, because that means that there's some hidden bias in my mind or some prejudice that I'm feeling that means I don't think I can relate to you. And again, it goes back to the fact that we're all humans and there is a relation between each and every one of us. And maybe that relation, maybe what I'm going to learn through that experience is what you're going through and how not to be a part of it, how
Yeah.
not to be part of continuing that pain or that hurt that people have to experience. And I think, the Black community, we experience the same thing. You're judged by the color of your skin, or you're Black, so you're uneducated and you're going to be loud and whatever it is. And then if you're not that, you're othered. And so I think that we just need to have a conversation about the fact that we're all individuals having our own individual experience. But I want to kind of talk about now your journey from having this thought, because you said it was until your mid 30s where you're kind of playing it shy and thinking back to that moment when you were 5, to being a woman who's now written a book about confidence, several books about women who are bossing up. So what is your personal bossing up story?
Honestly, it was from the pandemic. The pandemic, what a lot like, sometimes I'm in shock that 3 years ago we were all stuck at home. And for me, when that happened, I thought it was literally the end of the world. Like I was ready to give up on life. I was literally just watching K-dramas nonstop, eating junk food. So I literally just thought it was the end of the world. And of course, when you're stuck at home, and this is like something we didn't literally know what was going to happen, our mental health takes a toll on us, right? And me as a person, I'm very private as a person, in all honesty. So for me, it was also hard to share what I was feeling, to share what I was going through. And so the pandemic kind of let that out, because sometimes we have all these repressed feelings and it's literally like a ticking time bomb waiting to happen, right? It just like blows up. And so it blew up, like me and my family just kind of like blew up and just kind of started talking about the things that we were going through, right? But then
And it goes back to the fact that we're all humans and there is a relation between each and every one of us. And maybe that relation, maybe what I'm going to learn through that experience is what you're going through and how not to be a part of it, how
yeah,
not to be part of continuing that pain or that hurt that people have to experience. And I think, the Black community, we experience the same thing. You're judged by the color of your skin, or you're Black, so you're uneducated and you're going to be loud and whatever it is. And then if you're not that, you're othered. And so I think that we just need to have a conversation about the fact that we're all individuals having our own individual experience. But I want to kind of talk about now your journey from having this thought, because you said it was until your mid 30s where you're kind of playing it shy and thinking back to that moment when you were 5, to being a woman who's now written a book about confidence, several books about women who are bossing up. So what is your personal bossing up story?
honestly, it was from the pandemic. The pandemic, what a lot like, sometimes I'm in shock that 3 years ago we were all stuck at home. And for me, when that happened, I thought it was literally the end of the world. Like I was ready to give up on life. I was literally just watching K-dramas nonstop, eating junk food. So I literally just thought it was the end of the world. And of course, when you're stuck at home, and this is like something we didn't literally know what was going to happen, our mental health takes a toll on us, right? And me as a person, I'm very private as a person, in all honesty. So for me, it was also hard to share what I was feeling, to share what I was going through. And so the pandemic kind of let that out because sometimes we have all these repressed feelings and it's literally like a ticking time bomb waiting to happen, right? It just like blows up. And so it blew up, like me and my family just kind of like blew up and just kind of started talking about the things that we were going through, right? But then we were able to heal through that because we were able to talk about what we were feeling at that moment. And then at the same time, I met the lady who started the Women Who Boss Up series. And one of the things she was talking about was, why don't we make a book highlighting Asian women because of the work that you did? And I was like, yeah, why not? What's the worst that can happen? Right. And sometimes sometimes we just have to let go of things and just say yes, right? Because we don't know where it could take us. And, especially for Asian people, sometimes it's really hard to trust other people, right? It's just in our culture. And it takes a while sometimes, right? But once you get that trust, it's like you're good. So me, I just had to let go of always thinking people are, out to get me, right? They're good people out there. They're good people who have the same values that you do. And you just got to learn to say yes because it's either a blessing or a learning lesson. But I'm glad I was able to say yes, right? Because now look where I am today. Without that, I wouldn't be here. And then, just being in a community with all these amazing other female entrepreneurs just makes the journey a lot better, right? Seeing these ladies in our books just bossing up in their own businesses, right? Being able to meet them in person, being able to connect with them, to talk to them, be in business with each other, have a mentor, talk about the things we go through in a business. Because, being an entrepreneur is not easy, right? It's like literally a roller coaster. There's days where would totally just eat my feelings, right? Because I'm just like, this is depressing. But this is life, right? And I think the more we're honest about this, the more can people realize, like the more people can realize it's not as easy as it looks. Sometimes social media, again, they're like, oh, I'm having fun in Bali, I'm having fun in the Philippines. The older we get, that sounds great, but time zones suck. Okay. Like, I mean, I was in the Philippines for about a month and a half in December. And I was like, there's no way I'm waking up at 3 a.m. for a 3 p.m. call. Right. And where the older we get, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It sounds great on paper, but when you think about it, it's like, no, I want to be somewhere with a close time zone, right? Especially
Mhm.
North America is my audience. I have nothing against everyone else. If they can handle the time zones, it's great. I know I can't. It's just like that's just not happening.
Right.
And sometimes we just have to get real about the current situation that we're in. But yeah, honestly, being able to be part of the book series and the community, and like I mentioned, being able to ask for help is what really just jump-started my confidence even more. Because even though I found out that I was meant to color outside the lines, I was still resisting a lot. Imagine, for 30 something odd years, I was taught the same thing over and over again. And that also takes a while to unpack, right? To unlearn the bad habits that we had from the moment we come out of our mother's womb, right? So um yeah, that's, I'm just grateful for the community that I'm in, having that camaraderie, that sisterhood, because it's so important. As women, we should be working together instead of, fighting each other, right? Unfortunately, that still happens and it's rarely talked about. I mean, men get to advance faster because they're always doing things together. Women should be doing the same thing.
Yeah, you said a lot there, and I think that trusting others is huge,
Yeah.
and we can only trust others as much as we can trust ourselves. And so I think that that process, whatever internal process that you went to be able to relinquish that and
Yeah.
then say yes to that opportunity is huge in and of itself, and then to be able to go further and ask for help. Because I would argue that that is one of the most vulnerable places that you can be in, but also one of the most powerful, because now you're allowing yourself to really realize and recognize where you are and give yourself grace enough to say, and it's okay. Where
Yeah.
I am is okay. And it's all right that I need help. And I'm going to give myself the help that I need. And I think so often we deny ourselves of that assistance because we think that we should be in a different place or we should be doing something else. Because again, we listen to all the stories, we hear all of the things, we have the past on our minds. But if we're able to hone in on the present moment, get real about ourselves and like, who am I? Not who did my parents say I am? What does my culture say that I am? What did my boss say that I was supposed to be? Who is Jocelyn Michelle Reeves? Then we're really able to grow in our power and in our confidence. And I think that's difficult to do with social media because
Yeah.
we're looking at what they're doing. Should I be doing that? Comparing. And
Yeah.
that comparison, which people say is the thief of joy, lends itself to this sort of competitive mode.
Oh,
And
yeah.
to really move from, like you said, competition to collaboration. We're so much better together.
I totally agree. And the compare game is like, yeah, it's terrible, right? Especially,
Losing
you know,
game.
in Asian culture, like the compare game is so strong, right? The parents are being like, my kid's got straight A's, my kid is valedictorian, my kid's wedding is so much better than yours. So like that also feeds onto us. Like we feel like we always have to keep up with everybody. And then that takes a toll on our mental health, right? Because it's just never enough.
Yeah.
We just keep going on to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, and you're never satisfied, right? Even this definition of success, in social media, it's like if you're featured in Forbes, you're your success. If you have the fancy cars, you're success. If you made this and that, you're success. But in all honesty, success should look like whatever makes you happy, right?
Mhm.
Like if you want to work at the dollar store, that's success for you. That's great because I've seen people who are happy just working at the dollar store. And
Mhm.
they're like, I love the dollar store. I get discounts, right? And that's fine, right? That should be okay because everyone has a definition of success. Not
Mhm.
everyone has not everyone wants that, right? Some people just want to be able to go to Costco on a Wednesday, and that should be okay, right? We shouldn't be able to belittle people based on their goals because everyone's different. If you want to change the world, that's great. If you want to go to Costco on a Wednesday, that's great. If you want to live in a hut in the middle of nowhere so people don't bother you, that's great, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's time we need to redefine what that success looks like for each and every person so we can show up as our authentic selves and find true happiness, right? Not this happiness where it's like, once I get here, I'll be happy. Once I get here, I'll be happy. You need to be happy in that moment. Be grateful for everything that's happened to you. Be grateful for the lessons, the blessings, everything, because that's how you can just keep attracting better things into your life.
You're so right. And I think that projected happiness, that future faking happiness, we're so focused in on the destination, the end goal, that we
Mhm.
forget about the joy of the journey. And when we do that, it's just a rat race to get to where we're going to be. We look up, okay, I got it. And maybe I'm happy for 2 seconds about the promotion, the additional money, whatever it is. And then it's miserable again. So then we have to find another goal. When we learn to be content with where we are and define our own version of happiness, like truly sit down and say, what does happiness mean to me? What does joy mean to me? What does success mean to me? How do I want for my life to look? Agnostic of what other people think or how I've been told to achieve. What does that look like for me? And let me go for that. And I think one of the reasons that we have such a problem with that in society, and one of the reasons that we do project our own versions onto others, is because we haven't allowed ourselves to really embody what it is that we want to do. And so, nope, everyone has to have the same definition of success. This is what it looks like. It's this box. You have to fit into that box. You have to color inside the lines because that's what success looks like, knowing that we have our own definition. And I think that as much as people are able to relinquish those thoughts and really live out their own definition, they give other people the ability to do it as well. And so I think it really starts with doing that inner work and self-confidence.
I love it. Yeah. And can I just say, you're just an amazing host. I just want to say,
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, what are some of the top lessons we can learn from the Tao of self-confidence?
so I always say ask for help. That's now my number one thing. There's no
Mhm.
shame in asking for help. As women, we are all not super women. Be okay with that. There's no shame in that. If men can ask for help, so can women. Um, be your imperfect self, right? I mean, we don't have to figure everything out. We can figure things out as we go, right? There's a huge confidence gap between men and women because as women, we love to over prepare to the point where we're still over preparing and something still holds us back. While
Mhm.
men, they're like, let's say 30% ready, they'll just go for it, right? Whether it's asking a girl out on a date or asking for that promotion, they're just going to go for it, right? And if they get rejected, then they just move on. And as women, if we adapt that same way, just kind of figure things out along the way, we could do so much more. The number one reason why women have low self-confidence is due to inaction. And
Mm,
so if we don't take action, we feel bad about ourselves and then we start eating our feelings. Well, that's what I do. So like, there was a case study where there was a test between men and women, right? Taking this test on a computer. So they wanted to see who did better. So when they got the results, they saw the men did better than the women, but they realized the women didn't even try solving that problem. So
mhm.
they went back to the women and said, I just want you to put an answer. I don't care if it's right or wrong, just put something, right? And so when they did, the women did way better than men. So it's just proof that as women we're so capable, but it's because of how we perceive ourselves that really stops us from moving forward. We're so smart, we're so amazing. We've done things that we didn't even know was possible, right? I mean, we have the power to give life, just think about that. So we are so capable. It's really just how we see ourselves that really holds us back. And, when it comes to building confidence, it's daily work, right? It's daily work. It's kind of like if you want to stay healthy, right? You want to exercise and eat healthy, right? I always say take small daily actionable steps. Don't worry about making the big leaps, right? Like, you know, everyone always like, oh, I want to write a book, but I don't have time. I want to write a book, but I don't have time. I was like, listen, set yourself up to just write 1 page a day, right?
Yeah.
Just one page a day. That's all I ask. And see what happens after a whole year once you do that. You have a whole book or even two books if you really wanted to. So, just taking things one step at a time, right? You don't have because sometimes when you make that big leap and you don't hit it, guess what? Your confidence goes down. You're gonna feel like, you're gonna feel all kinds of feelings, you're gonna feel bad about yourself, and then you don't want to end up doing anything. And I think
Mm,
the most important thing as women as well is learning to love ourselves unconditionally, the good, bad, the ugly, finding time for ourselves, self-care, whether even if it's 5 minutes a day, right? You need time for yourself. We need to love ourselves first before we can serve others, right? And that's something that's not taught in schools. Nobody taught us to love ourselves, to take care of ourselves, to go for a walk, to find ways to mind dump. These are all very important in our daily life, right? Because that's how we can show up better. That's how we can work better when we can learn to just set some time for ourselves. And whatever that time looks like, it could be reading a book, it could be taking a walk, it could be window shopping, it could be watching something on Netflix or a stupid video on YouTube. It doesn't matter. This is your sacred time. So those are some of my tips.
amazing. And this is Confidence Conversations, and we've talked a lot about confidence, but I want to know, what does confidence mean to you?
For me, I think confidence is just, knowing your abilities and just going out there and taking action, even if it means falling on your face, getting ghosted, getting rejected, because that's all going to happen. You know, if you want to hear the truth, that's the truth, right? But also being able to be your authentic self, right? Showing your vulnerability. Being okay. It's like, sometimes it's okay not to be okay, right? Once we are more authentic in ourselves, it just flows, right? And even now with if you see current marketing trends, people are sick and tired of filters. People are sick and tired of perfection. They want, the authenticity, knowing that, you know what, I have muffin top and that's fine, right? Or here, I have a pimple on my face. That's normal, right? Because we're all human beings. We can't attain something that's unattainable, we have to be relatable. And so having that relatability factor can go a long way. Sometimes it may not always look like the popular choice, right? But we're talking about quality over quantity. So yeah.
Yeah, it is quality over quantity. And it's also another form of self-release. Like, give yourself permission to just be yourself. And I know for me, I talked a couple of weeks ago about my struggles with body dysmorphia, which I've kept close to the chest for years. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to tell the story because I know other people go through it. And also, I don't care. Like, I'm going to post the bikini photos and this. There's no like waiting until I get in shape to post the photos. It's just, it is what it is. The boobs are out and we're just showing up as we are. And it's been such a process for me. And it's another part of cultivating my own confidence daily. And it is such a journey. It's not a destination because we're changing as human beings. And the reality is, if we're really growing and evolving, there's always going to be one area or another in life where we feel just a little bit uncomfortable because we have some stretching to do, because we've put ourselves in that uncomfortable position or situation to allow ourselves the opportunity to grow. So I really appreciate you saying that. And before I let you go, Sheena, any final words of wisdom?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, as women, one thing we if you really want to go out there and, get the opportunities that you want, we have to be okay to make the first move.
Yeah.
You know, society has ingrained in their heads that, it's not proper for a lady to promote themselves, to make the first move, to sell an item. How are you supposed to make a living if you're constantly told not to do that, right? And in Hollywood doesn't help, when you have romantic stories where there's Prince Charming who's always going to save you. In real life, there's nobody saving you, You
Wake
gotta go out there and just make the first move. It's okay if you get rejected. It's okay if you get ghosted. I mean, I get ghosted all the time. I get rejected. And yeah, I just eat my feelings to kind of let it go past it. But I've also built that muscle to realize that's just life, right? If you
up.
fall down 100 times, get back up 101. Keep moving forward, right? Keep moving forward. If you see the most successful people in the world, they got rejected so many times before they made it big, right? And so as women, we just need to learn to just put ourselves out there, make the first move. Don't worry about the double standards we go through. The more we keep doing it, the more we can dismantle that and be seen as courageous and confident versus, too much or ambitious or, whatever negative names we still get. And, you'd be surprised. Most men like women who just go out there and just make the first move, right? Like, just even saying hi or introducing yourself, you don't have to have a crazy pickup line, just even being able to say hi. You'd be surprised how many men love this book. It's so funny.
Yeah.
When I go to like networking events, they're like, oh my God, that's so cool. You wrote a book. Oh my God, this is awesome. I love women who, it's so funny. So
Yes. Well, we're giving everyone permission and actually a homework assignment today to go boss up and to go buy Sheena's new book, The Tao of Self-Confidence. Sheena, thank you so much for joining me on Confidence Conversations.
thank you, Jocelyn. It's been an honor.